Welcome to the Embodied Self Podcast, a place for you to discover, explore, and embrace your truest expression. I'm your host, Ashley Pearl, and I believe wholeheartedly that the path to your most meaningful, joyful, and vibrant life is through becoming who you truly are. Join me as I share personal stories and have soul-expanding conversations alongside incredible humans just like you, with the intention to inspire your journey of personal exploration. We'll cover topics of self-development, wellness, spirituality, and so much more. And better yet, we'll share tangible tools and practices to support your most aligned life. So together, let's dive in and see what magic awaits on the other side of your most embodied self. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Today, I am joined by the beautiful Thalea Pretorius. She is an embodiment coach. She empowers women to transform their lives, to be free from anxiety and stress, emotional eating, and body shame so they can live a fulfilled life. She does one-to-one coaching, group coaching, and YouTube videos and meditations on Insight Timer and so much more. And she is a dear friend of mine, someone who I've personally learned from, been coached by, and just have had the honor to really get to know in the last year and a half. I don't know how long it's been, but Thalia, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Oh, Ash, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for inviting me. We've spoken about doing this for so long, so now we're finally here, and I'm just excited to dive deep with you.
I'm so excited too. And we have such an amazing topic for today, one that I think a lot of people are going to resonate with because there's just been such an interest in healing and self-development, and a lot of people aren't really sure where to start or what that looks like. And you and I were just kind of starting to jam on this topic of radical responsibility and taking ownership of our lives and our journey. And I'd love to know, what does radical responsibility mean to you, and how has that really helped you on your path to stepping into your full expression and authenticity?
Such a great question, and it's a fully loaded one because there's just been so many things, on my journey. And if I go back to the very beginning, I realized for a long time that I was running away from a lot of things and blaming external people, situations, circumstances for what was showing up in my life. And when I had this moment to really sit with everything and realize that I'm the common denominator in every situation, it started to really ring, like questions started coming, like, where do we start from here? Where do we go from here? How do I start to show up and take responsibility for my actions in order to live the life that I want? And it showed up in very many different ways. It started off with my body journey. And it started off actually through, if I go way back, started off with me traveling first, like it was almost an escape to run away from circumstances. And then that kind of led me to my body journey, in the sense of like trying to fit in and look a certain way and be acceptable. And then that kind of morphed into, well, if I fix all these different areas, why am I still feeling so unfulfilled? Because I was just putting, like we like to say, a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. And that's really what came down to. I'm doing all these things externally, but why am I still feeling empty inside? And that's when the spark went off of, okay, it's time to sit and face the hard things.
Yeah, I love that piece that you just named, right? I'm doing all of these things externally, but why am I still feeling empty inside? And I think so many people can resonate with that, right? It's like they feel like if I look a certain way, if I travel and I get to take that perfect Instagram picture, if I get right, all these people are doing that and they look happy. But when I achieve it, I don't feel that way. And so I'm curious, when you realized that, what were some of the first steps that you took?
remember this day like it was yesterday. And it actually makes me quite emotional thinking about it, because I had just gone on this transformational journey with my body, in the sense of losing a lot of weight, and I was getting a lot of validation from it. And this was a pattern that I've realized for a long time through growing up, like the binge restrict diet cycle. And when I thought of living a healthier life, I automatically associated a healthier life with losing weight, because that was the narrative and that was the story that stuck so true to me for so long, through society, through my growing up, everything. And so when I started the journey, eventually it started losing the weight, eating healthier, going to the gym. But then what I realized what I was doing was I was just, again, doing the external thing. And then I moved away to a city where I was living in South Korea at the time. I moved away to a city which was very isolated from my circle that I was in. And at that time, I started to slow down a bit, go a little bit more inward, figure out what was going on. And then when what I realized was the pattern started coming back, because now I wasn't getting the validation from the people around me, because I didn't know anyone. I was completely isolated. I was in a new environment, and I was craving some sort of safety and validation, and I didn't know where to get that. So I went to food. And then I noticed these old patterns that I thought I had fixed through diet culture was starting to come back, and it started to make me really, really terrified, because I was like, oh my gosh, like if I pick up all the weight, then I'm not going to be loved, and all of these things started coming up, and I was like, I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't keep going on this hamster wheel. And I sat and I probably like just cried, and I went online and a podcast. I started listening to podcasts, and I started slowly developing a curiosity to find deeper meaning to what was going on internally. And it was through podcasts, it was through self-study, reading books, and slowly following the little pieces that I was realizing that it was so much more internal than it was ever external.
Wow. Yeah. For me, it was podcasts too. And that piece about curiosity, like just letting, because sometimes we think it has to be this really complicated, big thing, right? Because it feels like this huge thing to tackle. And for anyone listening, I love what you just shared. It's like, just start with curiosity, and especially realizing that these patterns, I mean, it seems like you had some awareness already, like you were starting to notice your patterns and connecting, right? Which some people don't realize for a while, like, oh, me trying to be in a smaller frame is really just me looking for validation and love and acceptance,
Yep.
But starting with curiosity and just, starting to look for things that pique your interest. And from that point, I don't know if this is true for you, but this is what happened with me. Things would kind of just fall into my awareness. Someone would be like, oh, hey, I just started listening to this podcast, or you would really like this book. And then it's like, okay, I declared that I'm wanting to look inwards, and now the universe, or whatever you believe in, is sending me all of these opportunities. Did you find that as well? I see you nodding, but
Yes. That's exactly what happened. And obviously at that time, I didn't know the right wording around it, like following the synchronicities, or, all these things. And I was just overwhelmed by all these things that just started to catch my attention. And then I realized, now looking back, even just through this conversation, was I had clearly declared, like you said, my intention was to figure out what was going on. And through setting that intention, even if it was subconsciously, all the things started to filter into my awareness. And that's how it all pivoted for me.
Wow. Yeah. That's so beautiful. So you're living in a new place. And even you sharing that made me realize, because you've lived in a few different places. You mentioned South Korea. Now you reside in South Africa.
Yep.
And I know that, the diet industry is not just unique to the United States. Like it's global, and it's so fascinating and also very sad, right? That it has reached all over the world and impacts, people everywhere with the same messaging. So I just want to name that. I don't know if I just want to point that out. I don't know if you have anything to share on that. But I'm curious, when did you start to notice that your self-worth, or, the validation was maybe starting to come from within? Like, you started listening to podcasts, that was kind of the beginning, right? But where do you feel like some of those pivotal moments or pivotal experiences were in your life that brought you to where you are now, which is right, this person who empowers other women and other people. I would love to hear that.
Yeah. Wow, it's taking me back because it feels like it's been so long, but it just feels like it was yesterday at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I noticed was that I tried to change my external environment with different things, but the same, like I was doing the same thing. And so it started off with my body and the body stuff. And then I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to lose all the weight. Then I noticed the same thing occur with like the type of guys I was dating. It was like just unhealthy. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't a good fit, but I was a vibrational match for that. And that's what I kept coming. And then I started noticing it with the environments that I was hanging out in. And it was all very similarly linked. And then when I took myself out of those situations to kind of do some introspective and just sit with myself, I realized I can't, like I said, I can't keep doing the same thing. And so it was just realizing, what am I don't think at the time I asked myself these questions, but through the investigation process, the question of what do I need started coming up. What am I avoiding? What do I want from my life started coming up, because I enjoyed the lifestyle that I had. I was traveling, like you said, like on the outside looking in, I had everything. I was traveling, I had a decent job, I had money, I could do whatever I wanted. But there was that emptiness. And then I started asking those really intrusive questions that I probably never asked myself ever before. It was like, what do I want from life? Why is this making me unhappy? Where do I go from here? And it was just getting curious and asking myself those questions that I had never done before that led me to the right places.
And what were those places?
And then I went on another trip. It was in 2019, in June, I went on a trip with my mom and my sister. And I knew something was changing inside because I had now opened myself up to all these things, and all these things came into my awareness, which was overwhelming at times. And there was this like soul nudge that I always knew that I was going to work with women someday. I didn't know how, but I knew that was going to happen. And so I was unraveling my journey and unraveling what was happening. I went on this trip with them and connecting to them, listening to them, being away from them for so long, and then seeing them again and just exploring that journey. It opened me up to actually verbalize and say, like, there's this thing that's happening within me. There's these changes, there's these shifts that's happening, and I could speak it out loud. And I sat with my mom for the very first time, and I openly expressed how I was feeling, which was not, again, something that we've never done in our family. Communication was a huge sore point, sweep everything under the rug. And I started to really open up and share what was going on, how unhappy I've been, the fears and the unworthiness stuff that I started noticing coming up. And that was the starting point of really my relationship with my mom, because at that moment, she didn't know backstory. I didn't have a relationship with my dad, my biological dad. And so while I was investigating all these things started coming up and it started making sense. And I started putting all the pieces together. And so having this very honest, vulnerable conversation with her, she had no idea I was going through all of this. And I was going back into childhood and opening up these wounds or looking at them for the first time. And it was a part of me that was so afraid to open that part of me up, was because I never, ever wanted my mom to feel like she failed as a parent, that she didn't do all she needed to do for me, you know, but it was this big part of me that was lacking, that I started feeling unworthy because I never had that love, or I never understood why my biological father wasn't around in the first place. And so having that conversation with her, she started to really open up in a space where she really could feel me for the first time. And she was like, she never knew how to address this, so we never spoke about it. And she, like, I felt that it really opened up the beginning of me really diving deep, and then figuring and realizing and putting the pieces together, like, this is why I behave this way. This is why I'm searching for love in all the wrong places. And it was this deep abandonment wound that I needed to take radical responsibility for, because it was just constantly showing up in my life. And yeah, that's exactly where it all began, when I really, really started zoning in, and all the tears came and all the feelings came.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I had a huge wave start going through my body as you shared that you spoke openly to your mom for the first time. And I started to feel like you in that moment, and also you as a young child who I could only imagine when you said that piece, you never wanted your mom to feel like she failed you. So, young little Thalia being the, I'm sure, so sensitive and empathic, loving child that you were, you swallowed all of that down, right? You didn't want to share anything that was going to make you were taking care of your mother's emotions over your own, because you didn't know any better. And of course, your mom was doing the best she could as well, right? Like 100%. And I think this is such a key point to bring up, because this is actually something that I resonate with a lot as well. And it was moments where, looking back, I realized, wow, I completely shut off my own emotions that were really, really big, right? Like really, really big and really wanted to be expressed. But I hid them away to because I cared more for like other people's feelings. And I think, it ends up showing up in different ways. And I think that piece of radical responsibility is, once you notice that pattern, it's like, once you notice these things, you can't go back. You can't unsee them. You can't unlearn them, but it's, what are you going to do about it? Right. Yeah. And that vulnerability piece of like finally opening up to your mom and trusting that, like, one, you deserve to share this, right, from a loving place. And there's of course no blame or judge, there's none of that there. And if there is, lovely, we get to work on that, of course, right? Healing mother and father wounding is a huge of the healing journey. But I'm curious, like, from there, you mentioned that so much changed. And I know for me, like, finally being vulnerable with my family shifted so much for me. What started to shift for you? What changes in your relationships, in your life? I'd love to hear all about that.
Yeah. And then after that trip, I left. I went back to South Korea, and I came back completely changed after that conversation. It like opened up a part of me. I didn't know how to heal my inner child at that point. I didn't even know what I opened up. It was all raw, very raw and real emotions that was coming up, but I was grateful for the opportunity, because it 100% started to build a solid foundation again with my mom and I. And so that relationship started to be more open. We communicated more. I remember the first time I left home, it was such an escape that I'd hardly stayed in contact with my family, maybe once a week, if ever. Like, I was like, oh, no, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm going there. And like, I just didn't even bother. That as long as they knew I was safe, that was kind of it for me. And I just started to really reach out more and schedule in calls and make connecting a more priority. And after that, that's when I actually found the Hungry for Happiness certification program that we both did. And it was literally like 2 days or something coming back from that trip. And that's why I said, following those synchronicities, like, I've done all this work and now I'm open, raw, vulnerable. I'm like, I don't know where I go from here. And then I listened to a podcast and I heard about this. And then I started seeing all the stuff online, people talking about it. And then I was like, I remember sitting with one of my best friends at the time. And I was like, so there's this thing that I've been seeing constantly and I can't quite shake it, but it's so much money and I don't know if I can afford it, and blah, 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 going into story. And she just looked at me and she's like, this is going to help you do it. And I'm so grateful that, like, almost like permission slip. She's like, it doesn't matter if you turn this into a business, if it turns into anything. She's like, it's going to help where you're at right now. Just do it. And I did it. And I took the leap. I literally had the clarity call and I was signed up immediately. I was like, I can't fight this. And that's when everything changed.
I love this. Our stories are very similar in that, actually, in that we had this nudge for a really long time that we knew we wanted to work with women. And we knew that we had, I'm sure for you too, like, played this role with our friends and in our lives, right? Where we're person people come to, the person that people seek advice from. And it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this? Like, it feels like this is something, but what do you do? And then for me too, the podcast, or I heard about it for the first time through a podcast about Hungry for Happiness, now called Pause Coaching, which I think I've talked about before, but I'll share more in the show notes. And so much change. And so that's a 10-month program, right? And I'm curious, what were some of your biggest learnings and changes that you experienced during that time?
During that 10 months, so much. I really learned how to nurture my inner child. Like, I had no connection to her. I knew now, in hindsight, I knew when I spoke to my mom for the first time, I was really tapping into her, and she was left very vulnerable in that moment. And so learning to nurture was such a big piece. I remember, like, through a meditation or a guided visualization, connecting to her for the first time. And she came to me in this process, and the first thing she said, she's like, don't leave me, don't abandon me. And that was exactly the same piece that I've been living this robotic lifestyle, stuck in the patterns, was because as much as I didn't want people to abandon me, I was abandoning myself. And to make it even more bizarre, it's so crazy how our subconscious just does dictates everything, and our little girls and little guys dictate everything, was I created my entire life abroad to make being abandoned normalized. Because in the lifestyle that I was living, I was teaching English at the time. People come for a year, people come for 2, people come and go. So it's constantly new people. People leave. So it's me constantly saying goodbye to friends and then welcoming in new constantly. So for me, it was like I normalized people constantly coming and going. So I didn't think it was a problem until I realized that, and was like mind blown. I'm like, I made my trauma normal so that I could be safe and I could cope. That was my coping mechanism the entire time. So that was a huge piece.
Wow. It is really amazing. Once you start to look at your patterns, you truly do realize how your subconscious recreates, even if it's so painful, what's familiar to you, right? And it's an opportunity because you get to like experience that and realize it and heal from it. But oh my goodness, I mean, I had a realization the other day that was really similar when I was starting to notice these patterns in the way that I was speaking to myself. And it isn't always, it happens here and there. And I'm like, wow, the exact words that I'm saying to myself are literally the words that people said to me when I was younger. That was really hurtful and created a lot of wounds that I've worked very, very, very hard to heal and transcend. But it's amazing when you start to realize, that's not my voice. That's actually the voice of, someone else. And I'm just recreating this same scenario. It's incredible. I mean, it's amazing when you start to have those realizations and the perspectives that you do. And I know that for me, the program Hungry for Happiness or Pause Coaching, it really allowed me to put language to what I had been experiencing, and it allowed me to separate from the thing so that there was no, I was no longer like sitting in the suffering. I was just like, oh, okay, I can view my life. Here's what's happening, and here's what I'm going to do about it. So I thank you for sharing that piece, because I know that it's a deep piece that you've worked with for a while, the inner child. And just for anyone listening, maybe that are like, inner child, what is that? How would you share what that is with them?
So how I'd like to describe it is that we are made up of so many different parts. And so we operate from different parts of us according to whatever the situation you're in or the circumstances that you're in. And so generally, as you grow up, there's certain needs, there's certain things that you didn't get from your parents growing up. And so we tend to operate majority of the time when we're not aware of it from that wounded inner child part that's just looking to get her needs met or his needs met. And so that is how I would describe it. So it's like you in your real body as a human, but you are acting out as a little girl or a little guy, and maybe throwing a tantrum, getting really angry, getting like all the things that you see a little toddler doing. We're actually doing that in our real everyday lives.
Mm-hmm. We sure are.
Mm.
So in your present day now, how do you keep these, learnings close? Like what does life look like and feel like, and how are you nurturing your inner child, and how are you, taking everything that you learned and putting it actually into practice?
And that's when the big embodiment piece comes from. And that's, I know you've shared, I think on your first episode, what embodiment really is for you and how you described it so beautifully. This is the big thing that took me away from just normal personal development. So during the program, I also realized that I thought I was doing personal development, and then everything I thought I was doing needed to be relearned and unlearned and start from scratch kind of situation. And so for me, it's really about taking on these new tools, taking on these new lessons that I've learned, and really, really being slow and like really building a relationship with myself again, and noticing when I'm acting a certain way, instead of just going into full on react mode, just quieting, pausing, taking a moment to reflect and be like, what do I actually need right now? What's happening right now? So asking those questions again, and so it's been a huge shift in slowing down, noticing what's happening within, and giving myself what I need versus looking for it outside of myself. And this has been a process. I mean, I've been doing this for now, I don't even know, like 3 years constantly. And I'm very blessed because this is my work, this is my passion, this is my everything. So I'm always in it. But for those listening that this is brand new, like big thing that I can say is be patient with yourself. This is not one of those mountaintops. Once I get there, then I can tick this off my list and I'm fully healed. This is lifelong work. But it's beautiful work. It's deep, soul nourishing. You are worthy of this work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a way of life. It's a daily commitment. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Thalia. Oh, I love it. And I'm curious if there's anything else that feels just like burning that you want to share with regards to this work or your life or your journey, anything that's coming up, a favorite book that you read along the way, like anything that someone who's listening can, really take away and maybe start to take into action.
Yeah. Another key piece that was really pivotal on my journey was knowing that I don't have to do this alone, because for so long, I really just grabbed onto the identity of I have to be independent, because that was a story that my mom had put in me, like you're going to be independent, you're going to have your own money, you're going to do this by yourself kind of thing. Like you got this, you're strong, which I love. But I became so addicted to that I became a shadow. And so it was like, I'm not allowed to ask for help. I have to be the strong, independent woman. And so the minute that I signed up for this course and did the program was me putting my hand up and said, I don't have to do this alone. I get to do this with other people, and which was a big step for me to like be vulnerable around other people, to open up around other people, to share. But even in my just being present in those spaces, even not sharing, just being present in those spaces, healing magic happened. And so even if for anyone that's maybe just afraid to step in, to fully commit to like, I'm going to take this radical responsibility and I'm going to go all in, even just starting small and putting yourself into spaces where you get to witness other people, where you get to just see what's happening, maybe that's going to a yoga class, maybe that's going to a sister circle, or just going somewhere where you're around other people, where you can see what's happening. And then through that, the walls will start to come down, you'll start to soften, you'll start to open up. And that is a really good first step, to just like dip your toe into the work, see what everyone else is doing, and then kind of regulate and see how you can go from there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you brought this up for so many reasons. One, absolutely. There's so many free resources too. I mean, I know that you and I have both held free workshops, and we kind of toyed around with the idea of maybe putting something together soon. So putting that out there. And there's just so many ways that you can put yourself together with other people who are doing this work. I mean, I know for me early on in my journey, I realized when they say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? I was like, okay, well, in that case, I want to be around people who are also doing personal development work and also believe in, the spiritual things that I like to talk about. I don't always want to be the person that people think is the loony witch in all of my friend groups. Like I want to be able to talk about this stuff openly. And you know what I mean? And so it was just starting to, like you said, put myself in different groups, even at one point creating my own little just circle and inviting some people who I thought were kind of interesting and seeing what I could learn. And from there, then meeting new people and being invited to new experiences. There's so much you can do that doesn't have to be you investing in a full program. And that being said, when you do invest in yourself, and like you said, you were like, oh, I don't know if I can do that 10-month program. It was a lot of money. And I thought the same thing. And then I thought, well, what's the cost of me not doing this? Do I want to be in the same place a year from now? And the answer was, hell no. I didn't want to be in the same place. I felt in my body, it was pulling me towards doing something. And the reality is that when you start to take those aligned action steps, you're met with such support and love along the way. And you mentioned earlier, like the kind of like you can build stories around, what's going to happen if I do this program? I'm going to be, stuck on the street, or I'm not, I'm going to like lose all my money and never gain it back. Like, no, you're going to figure it out. And that's where the self-trust comes and all the other juicy goodness. And it's just a really beautiful journey. So I love that you shared that. And I would encourage anyone listening to really take that to heart and start to, maybe join one free workshop or masterclass or something, or maybe even you join one that you have to pay for. I'm joining one today that I'm so excited. A friend of mine is putting it on, and I'm like, yeah, I'll support you and pay you money and learn from you and be in your space and meet the other people that you bring together. Like, wow, what an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, so true. And I've grown exponentially just by putting myself in spaces with other women or other, guys as well, just putting myself in that spaces, learning from somebody else, and also breaking down that narrative. Like I said before, I have to do this alone, but also realizing how deeply connected we all are. And with the turn of events of the whole world, like separation isn't gonna help, as we can clearly see, so really deeply connecting, being there for one another, loving, learning, growing. That's the way forward. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing from you, and to tie it back to our original theme, which I love how we can just go in so many directions because there are so many things you can that are captured under this one theme of radical responsibility. It's looking at your life from a curious place and looking at your patterns, looking at how you spend your time, how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis or in every moment. And if there's something that doesn't feel good, making a decision to actually take a step forward in a direction that feels like it would feel better. And it's trial and error, and it's, just getting curious and being open. Is there anything else that you would add to that, I guess kind of definition about it?
You've nailed it. I think you did a pretty good job. And I'd highly recommend that, like, as you go on this journey and taking this radical responsibility, it's gonna hit you with a whole lot of things. And that's part of the course. And to really lean into it and trust that what you're looking for is on the other side of that. Like the old cliche, move through the uncomfortability and your freedom's on the other side, but it's so true. Move through the pain, and then also knowing that you get to ask for help through it. You don't have to do it alone. Like, that will really, really just make it so much easier.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And Thalia, you support a lot of women on this journey. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if people are interested, how they can find you and connect with you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to share. Like you can hear from this, I could talk for hours because I'm this passionate about it, because I physically have seen the transformation, not only within my own life, but in my family's life. And I feel like one of my what I feel like I was sent on this earth to do was to break those generational cycles. And so for me, it's such a gift to hold space and to be that guide for other women, to be that vehicle in their lives, in their families, in their relationships, and just to completely transform their lives, because it's possible. I'm nobody special. I just took radical responsibility and I made a decision to want to change my life. And so my company is called Hersunkissedsoul Coaching, because I believe I am Hersunkissedsoul soul and I'm sharing light and love on all those that come my way. And what I do is I have a 4-month program, one-on-one coaching container at the moment. And I really take you through a real intense program of really going through everything we spoke about today and holding your hand along the way. And again, this is not about me teaching you stuff. It's about me guiding you back to you and really peeling back that layers, because you know who you are at your core. You know what your soul is craving. And sometimes you just need somebody to believe in you and cheer you on along the way. I like to tell my clients, I'm your cheerleader in your back pocket. And and it's fun. This healing work can have a lot of dark shadow stuff around it, and it can be overwhelming and all the things, but we also get to have fun along the way. We get to bring in that childlike curiosity. We get to play, we get to express what joy looks like. So it's everything in my program. And then I also am very active on my socials. And like as you said, we are definitely going to be planning some sort of workshop thing. So stay tuned for that. I'm excited. So there's many ways to connect, and I share on my YouTube channel as well. And I do lots of meditations and stuff on Insight Timer, just to get your feet wet. If you're really, it's overwhelming, you don't want to quite jump in just yet, there's lots of free resources just so that you can start figuring this journey out for yourself, just like we did in the beginning. We dipped our toe in with all the things, and then we decided, okay, we're ready for this.
Yes. And I love your meditations on Insight Timer and all the content you share on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. I mean, it's so much value. You provide so much value. And I always feel just so inspired and empowered when I see your face and your words pop up. And I'm so grateful for you and the work that you do in this world. And you mentioned your 4-month one-to-one container. Are you currently accepting new clients?
Yes, I am. My enrollment process is open, and I'm just putting this out there so that I can be held accountable. I really feel like there's something else brewing that's going to come out sometime this year, like maybe a group program or something. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling that sense of bringing people together in the sense of community. So I'm speaking that into existence.
Amazing.
So stay tuned.
Amazing. Well, anyone who gets to work with you or be in your sphere are so lucky to have you. And I just thank you so much for being here and sharing sharing yourself and your wisdom and your learnings with all of us.
Oh, thank you so much, Ash. It was an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast. I'm so proud of you. I'm your biggest cheerleader too. And I'm just grateful to do life with you.
You too. Thank you.